years of looking into something, right? I'm not a religious person. You're not a religious
Honestly,
person.
you've lost me. I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
Evolution.
I don't understand where evolution came from. We're talking about bones. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know how you came from bones to like to evolution. I don't understand like where that
it's
came.
life, Raquel. It's life. Get used to it. It's life.
I seriously don't understand where you came from one to the other. Like all of a sudden you're talking about something and then it went to something else and I'm just like
She just made a boring face, guys.
I made a lost face because I have no idea what you're talking about.
So what I'm trying to say is, I was saying that our Creator, whatever made us,
my mom and my dad.
They didn't make me.
They didn't make you. They made me. That would be weird. Yeah.
But like I was saying, like our Creator, whatever made us, they made us everything for a reason. Every little thing about our bodies is structured in a certain way to do something.
Okay.
If something like the carvings in our bones, if our femur was carved a different way, we wouldn't be as strong, right? And I was telling a buddy of mine this, and he says that like he doesn't understand why it's separate, why the church and evolution is separate. Like there's only one side. It's church, evolution. Like people think like that. You know what evolution is, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to? I've read 4 chapters of a bone book. I know evolution now.
I was gonna say it's not. Okay, go on.
Okay. You want me to explain what evolution is?
No.
Okay. So
I'm sure I could Google it.
No, and it's separate. It's kind of like, why can't it be in the middle? Why do we just push? Why in religion do we just push all the years of research under the rug?
I don't know. I don't go to church again.
No, but even like, do you find it crazy that people do that?
I find it crazy. There's a lot of stuff people do that don't make sense.
Yeah, that is true. Touche. Pound it. All right, I get it.
That's gross.
But I get it. No, like there's just gonna be people that just don't agree, I guess.
No, there isn't.
So, I was so fascinated with the book. Raquel listened to the interview already. What'd you think of my interviewing? What'd you think of Roy Mills? And
you're interviewing. You need to get better.
I do, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you for being straight up with me.
I will tell you. Definitely.
Yeah. What do you think I need to get better at?
I feel like you're trying to what is it? We were talking about you earlier. Me and my sister and your sister were like gossiping about you. Like, Jesse sucks. Yeah, we know. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I was just saying that when you try to explain it, like the way you say it doesn't come off the right way. Yeah. The way you word it doesn't sound good. Like that poor girl you interviewed the other day or talked to, you couldn't even fucking get her name right.
Oh my God.
Who does that? I shit you not. Like at first I thought, okay, maybe you were joking.
Yeah.
And then after the 5th time, I'm like, just stop already. Stop.
She told me her name.
Her name is Philomena.
Philomena. She told me like 10 times.
Can you say it?
Yeah, Philomena.
Yeah.
Philomena.
So why were you saying it like, why did it take you 5 times and you couldn't even get it right?
I've been hit in the head.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
You know what? If you've been hit in the head, then you shouldn't be driving. Then you should not be driving.
I don't drive. You don't let me drive.
Yeah, exactly right.
No, but in all honesty, it's just I'm nervous. I'm new to this, and it's just nerve-wracking, right? Especially on the Zoom. Especially, I need to get better at it. Especially when it's people I don't know. So it's just nerve-wracking. I'm getting a little bit better.
I think that should be your thing. Like, come to a place where we fuck up your name or something, you know, because you don't get anybody's name right. Like, nobody's.
I'm horrible with names. I could be talking to you for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you told me your name like 10 times. Like, if you listen to the Daniel Barbarisi, the one with his book.
Yeah.
He said Chasing the Thrill like 10 times in that podcast.
And how many times did you say it?
I forgot it every single time. I don't understand my memory.
You know, I'm not really good with names, but like we'll say, I didn't know Jacob for a while. We'll say Jacob as an example. And I'd be like, who's Jacob? How many times I gotta tell you the guy that works at the movie theater. But there's other people from the gym where I don't know their names. So I have to put something to it. Like, I'm not gonna say what else. And it's nothing bad. But you know what I mean? Like, you always say, who's that? And I always say, who's that? And you're like, come on.
Yeah.
So I'm not really good with names as well.
Me neither. But we'll be at places, and then we see somebody I know that I don't remember who that is, and you're.
This is how bad he is with names. We went to a restaurant here in town, and most people know that listen that Jesse and his mom had gone in a car accident. You're and stupid. Jesse and his mom have gone in a car accident, and the guy that got there and was helping take Jesse out, we ran into him years later. Jesse did, and Jesse's like, I don't even know his name either.
Lewis.
Is that his name?
Yes. I called him Larry.
Larry! And then he was like...
I stuck out my hand.
Yeah. He was like,
Larry!
He's like, no, Lewis. How do you forget somebody's name that helped you in a car accident?
He looked so mad.
You should have said, dude, I was in a car accident.
Oh, man. He looked so mad. This dude literally was my baseball coach for years.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
He saw the car accident with me and my mom. Pulled me out of the car, basically is it really saving my life? I mean, I wasn't dying, right? I mean,
technically you were dying.
Actually, I was dying.
Okay.
I almost died, guys. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of almost dying, I had a podcast with, what's his name interviewed me? Kevin. Kevin interviewed me on Let's Have This Conversation. Mm-hmm. Go check it out. Links in our link tree. So go check it out.
I have it on the Hassle of Hair.
Yeah, I'll have it on till probably Sunday. So go check it out if you haven't checked it out.
Give it a listen.
Check it out.
Give a follow.
Check it out. So.
Anyways, we're talking about you not knowing someone's name.
Yeah.
You said Larry. He's like, no, my name's Lewis. That was the biggest fuck up I ever seen you do. Oh, and then when we had Maria on here, you kept calling her Mariah.
Oh, yeah.
And she's
Sorry about that.
Sorry, Maria.
Sorry about that.
I think
she does cutie pie cakes. I kept on getting her name wrong.
Yeah.
Cutie pie cakes, guys. Go check them out. They're
I don't know if she's still doing it or not.
Yeah, I think she is.
She is? Okay. Yes. They moved to Texas.
Yes. But yeah, I am bad with names. And then this is probably the worst. The worst time. Oh, actually no. This is probably my meanest time, right?
What?
I remember when we went downtown, right? I still feel bad for this, but I have a thing where I don't know what it is. I get like when somebody sees me and they want to talk to me that I haven't talked to them.
When I was driving and the guy goes, Jesse! And I slowed down. I was like, no, keep going.
So we were downtown.
By Christmas in the Park, if anybody knows that, in San Jose.
We were taking off from a parking space that we're leaving. Mm-hmm. So we're leaving, and right when we're about to leave the parking space, you just see this guy running, Jesse, and he's just a good guy, but she's like, oh, she stopped, and I was like, no, take off now. I'm such a dick, man, but it's a weird
that's mean.
It is, but I have no energy to. Sometimes I don't have energy to.
No, this is the thing.
That was just too much excitement. No. Like I wasn't. It's just too much excitement.
This is the thing. You get yourself in situations where you will ask the littlest question, like, "Hey man, how's your day going?" or something, and then you get stuck after that. Like you didn't expect someone to tell you their whole fucking life story, and then I'm just like, "You got yourself into it. I gonna help you." So
there'll be times where we're at parties or something. Well, not right now because we can't go to parties. But there was times when we went to parties and I would say hi to somebody and I would be standing next to Cal and I'm like, hey, how's your day? And they just start talking, da 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 da. And she could I could feel it, she could feel it, where I'm just like done talking. Like there's nothing, and I don't know. That's what it is. I nailed it. I get so scared of having conversations because I don't know how to exit a conversation. I'm the most awkward person when it comes to exiting a conversation. I don't end it. I either just walk away.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye.
Not even that. No. I was like, oh, okay. And then just take off.
It's the awkward silence with you, right?
Or I have like a 3-hour long conversation with somebody because I don't know how to end it.
That's very true.
Oh, dude.
That's your problem.
Why go to psychiatry when you could just start a podcast?
I mean, is it working?
See, you're good though, because you avoid conversations because you don't you are closed. It's hard to approach you. It's hard to approach you. It was hard for me to approach you at the bar.
Really? You were creepy at the bar.
Yeah, creepy.
All night. I don't know how many times you had to walk back and forth. Like, you were creepy. And it was like... and then you were creepy because who comes up to somebody and kisses their forehead?
I do. But no, but
you
like...
know, you don't do that anymore. You better start kissing my forehead.
I kiss you on the lips.
Ew. Gross.
But you close yourself off where you don't have to deal with these conversations. Me, I'm open, I'm nice, I let people just talk to me. I mean, I'm doing a fucking podcast for God's sakes. And like, it's so like, right? Am I the only one that has an awkward time ending a conversation? That is so weird. It's the hardest thing to do with anybody.
Why can't you just lie and be like, all right, dude, I'm gonna go get a soda, I'll be right back, and then not come back?
Because that's even worse.
You could just say, oh, I got caught up talking to somebody else on the way there.
I don't know. It's such a weird thing.
How do you not know how to end a conversation?
It's hard. Like today I was interviewing somebody on Zoom, and I was like, okay, guys, like I was ending it, right? So when I end it, I have to acknowledge the guest and then say goodbye to the audience, right? To my grandma, basically, because that's the only one that listens. Hi, Grandma. But we're having a conversation, and then I was like, okay, thanks for coming on, so and so. And then I go, okay, guys, thanks for listening. Okay, bye. And I just
okay, bye.
You guys, talking is hard. Today, Roy Mills. Roy Mills, guys.
Retired bone doctor.
Retired?
Right?
Bone doctor.
Yes.
Retired orthopedic surgeon.
He said bone doctor on there.
He is a bone doctor.
He said it. He said, I'm a retired.
He fixes hands. Right? I don't know.
Why'd you do that?
I don't know why I do the hands.
My Jesus.
But like, think about when you retire, right?
Retire from what? What am I gonna retire from?
I don't know.
What am I gonna retire from? Tell me.
I don't know. From everything.
What are you gonna retire from?
I could coach the rest of my life. Fighting? No, I can't fight the rest of my life. I could coach the rest of my life.
Well, not if you're forgetting shit upstairs and you come back down. You are not retiring from fighting.
I could do podcasting the rest of my life. But it's just, I don't know. I hope this all works. But he retired, right? And he does not stop working. He's writing another book. He's writing a book about muscles. And really, really cool guy who you know the passion that he has for bones through this book and the passion of teaching. And that's why he's such a good person, is because he's not going to sit there and tell you how smart he is by telling you the correct terms and explaining it in a very educated way.
Okay.
No, he sat down with me one-on-one, and the way he talked to me was like, we're equal. And that's how you should teach somebody, right? Once you're over somebody and saying, I'm your boss and listen to me, and all, you shut a person out. But a teacher could get leveled with their student and just teach them. Talk to them in a way they need to be talked to.
Okay.
And he is so good at that. He's an amazing man. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
I listened to it more than I watched it, though, because I was on the computer anyways.
I think people do that.
No, I think a lot of people more like to watch it. They want to see people's like expressions on their face.
Before we go, you went to Disneyland.
I did on New Year's. Not like on New Year's to celebrate, but we went.
Yeah.
It was fun. I mean, it did have like shops open. Okay, so when he's saying I went to Disneyland, he did have to pay for parking, which was $10. But downtown Disney was open. We got there kind of late. We got there super late, actually. They did have some shops open. They didn't really have too many food places open. You couldn't drink or eat in there. You had to take everything to go. They did have some vending, like churros and corn dogs and stuff like that out there.
Corn dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did have California Adventure open. You can walk around and shop in there and stuff like that. So it was fun.
Yeah.
But since you brought that up though, they had this thing that drives me crazy. Oh, they had people there in line that had dogs, and they were small dogs. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But it was like a Frenchie, and I think another one was like a little long-haired Chihuahua or something. I don't know. And they put a fucking service vest on them. And you know damn well that those little fucking dogs aren't service dogs.
Yeah.
When there's people that actually need fucking service dogs, and these people just want to do it to let me just bring my fucking dog into Disneyland kind of thing. And it just really fucking grinds my gears. Because, I mean, Eva, she can get a service dog because she's legally deaf. And she can have that. She can get it. She could take it in if she wants to go to the stores or school, to places like that. But people that don't need it, and they ask the girl, like, oh, well, whose dog is that? Is it a service dog? Yeah, well, what? And they asked her, like, well, what is it service? And then the girl goes, like, oh, well, it's going to sound real bad. She said, I have seizures.
Yeah. But you could tell. So, I don't know. We don't know
anything
anything about service dogs, but. Sorry.
No, go on.
No, we don't know anything about service dogs, but you were saying, like, you can tell a little bit because the dog wasn't paying attention. And when you see a good service dog, they're just literally just sitting there waiting.
Yeah, this dog was not doing any of that. It was trying to walk off. It wasn't where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because I've seen service dogs. And when you walk in, they tell you, don't touch this dog. Don't touch the dog. Just walk past it. And it's I guess I would say a service dog, police dog or something. And they know they're trained to do. All they do is walk by you. They smell behind you, then keep going.
So sketchy.
Yeah.
If you have a service dog and you don't need a service dog, fuck you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think what it was is they just bought the vest or the patch and put it on there.
Yeah.
So they could take their dog in. But when we got there, it was really late. I think we got there. Well, it just seemed late because the sun was already going down.
Mm-hmm.
But when we got there, it was around 5:15. So and the park didn't close until 9. So and then people left their dogs in the fucking car. He didn't go.
Yeah.
My bad. People left their dogs in the car, and you can hear them like barking and crying. I felt so bad.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I'm like, why the fuck are you gonna take your dog for? You know damn well you can't take your dog inside. Why are you taking pets for?
But look this is how bored people are. My wife and my sister-in-law, their family, and
our daughter
and my daughter, they went to Disneyland not to ride the rides, but to walk around.
Yeah.
What the fuck, dude? That's so crazy.
I got 8 churros. I got to eat churros. Shopped a little bit.
Yeah.
It was fun though. I mean, we didn't get home till like 2 a.m, but it was super fun. It was something to get out of town and do. Let me tell you guys, the LA freeways were empty.
So crazy.
Dead.
So crazy.
Yeah. So if you were those people that buy a vest for your dog that's not a service dog, shame on you.
Do you guys?
I'm just saying.
It is.
I mean, like, there's actually people that really need it. But I think Disneyland did say that they're gonna stop having people like that take, because it's a Frenchie.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's hard to say because we don't really know.
Come on, you know you're lying.
No, that's the thing. Like, I'm starting to go into the world of really, really trying to understand stuff. And I'm the more people I talk to, the more people I get interviewed by, I'm truly understanding that you really have to do work to understand something. You're not going to learn it in one day. And I learned that through fighting. I learned that through even the podcast.
Mm-hmm. How many podcasts have you been on now? Like 5?
4.
4?
Yeah. 4.
Okay.
So it's kind of like.
Are you sure? I think it's more.
I don't know. But I want to highlight. this podcast is evolving as we go, right? It's evolving. I'm adapting. Adaptive Sessions. Diego. Adaptive Sessions, guys, go check him out. Guys, go check him out. No, but I'm evolving.
So weird.
I'm adapting, right? It is changing. Right? We're not the same podcast when we started, but I think
better audio. Yeah. We just need better video.
But I want to highlight those people that went after their passions. They went after their dreams, because we live in a world where social media is.
You gotta lie to put a service vest on your dog that's not a service dog.
Exactly, guys. Don't be that person that puts a service vest on a service dog that's not a service dog, motherfuckers. Like, no, but for real, like, social media has made people think they're more than what they're worth. Right? I'm not saying this from an envious point of view. I'm saying this because I have a 14-year-old daughter who I don't want growing up thinking that she needs followers. Fuck that.
Just so y'all know, we barely just let her have a social media.
Yeah.
Like, and she does have Instagram, but that's about it. She doesn't have anything else other than that.
But
and we're still iffy on it too. Like, we could just snatch, take that away.
It's just we're in a pandemic, so it's hard for her to contact people, and I want it to feel a little bit normal, but at the same time, the world shows this social media world where it's so fake. And if you actually talk to people like Roy Mills, who we had on today, they're experts and stuff, and they don't need social media. Can
I tell you another thing where you don't know how to end? A podcast. We're already like 30 minutes in. This is only supposed to be 20 minutes.
I know. Sorry, guys. But I'll end it on this. And so, and then talking to Daniel Barbarisi, like, they don't need social media. And I'm telling you guys, like, you don't need it. If me, I transferred all my social media to the laptop. I'm on my laptop, but my buddy, I don't always have to name drop.
But you always do.
My buddy gave me the advice of changing it, putting everything on my laptop, and don't run my social medias from my laptop.
You mean from your phone?
From my phone. It has changed the world for me, because you realize it's literally people like this.
What's up with your voice? Why did it go like that now?
Because this is deep Jesse talking. Woke Jesse talking. But you have your hands and you're just like,
Jesse talking.
You're just looking, and you don't want to judge. Even if you don't want to judge, you're still judging. You're still finding, oh, that's funny. That's not funny. That it is such a mindless thing. It's go be productive is something.
We're basically living Black Mirror.
For real. I don't know.
What do you think?
Yeah. And I think I changed my goal from what I used to have the goal in the beginning was just to start a podcast, right? And I did, but it's kind of like I'm evolving into we're evolving, right? One, I got my comedian here, my wife. But it's to show, like, there's experts out there, and Roy Mills is an expert. Daniel Barbarisi is an expert in journalism, and then we have experts coming on and that we did have on already, and that we're gonna drop. And it's y'all. Some people just need to wake up. It's not a woke thing. I'm not trying to be all like woke and trying to tell people what to do and stuff.
I have a question. Who the hell says woke still?
I don't know. Why did I say woke? I don't know. Weird. But just
because you're a dad and you're not cool.
Yeah, I'm not cool. It's just a weird thing, man.
Okay, end it.
No, I'm so passionate about it because of Eva.
That's you need to end it.
Okay.
End it.
Rub me more.
You guys enjoy this episode.
With
Roy Mills.
Subscribe, like, notifications on. If you like his stuff,
you're kind of a hypocrite.
If you like,
because you're just talking about, like, you don't need social media. Subscribe, like.
Oh, such a fucking hypocrite. Don't fucking listen to me, guys. I'm a fucking dumbass. Do not listen to me. Oh my God. No, but like, subscribe, notifications on. If you want to learn something and you want to
don't learn from Jesse.
Go learn. So go learn on Roy Mills' book. Bones Inside It Out. Link's going to be below.
We're only days into the new year. Try to read a book.
Yes. And follow all our Instagrams.
Really?
But don't go on social media.
Don't go on social media.
And just, give us a review if you can. And if you love this episode and you really want to help us out, the best way to help us out is just tell a friend, right? Tell a friend about this podcast. Word of mouth is the best way to do it. If you really support us, tell a friend. If you're a driver, FedEx driver, and you're at a stop, say, hey, I'm listening to this cool ass podcast of this dude that has a really cool voice and his wife who's
a really cool voice and a crooked nose.
And tell a friend, guys. I love you. If you're driving for FedEx, UPS, any driving company, we respect you. We were there once. Keep on going. And
okay.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Okay. I just want to give a good shout out to. Can I give one more shout out?
No more.
Shout out to my grandma.
Okay, grandma.
Yeah, around the world, Okay. Alaska, thanks for listening. And I see you, Gustine. I see you guys are spreading our podcast. Thanks for sharing it. I love you guys. Have a great day and enjoy the episode. At the Hassle of Hair, we like to have people on that went after their dreams or have inspirational stories or just decided to go all in on their passions. And you decided to write a book about bones called Bones Inside and Out. It's an awesome book. I've started it. I'm 2 chapters in, and the way you talk about bones is, for a dummy like me, it makes it really, really easy to understand.
Oh, good. That was my goal.
Yeah,
not for dummies. You're not a dummy, but that for people with not a technical background and don't want to get one in a hurry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to explain things and use simple terminology and use analogies so that people without a terribly strong scientific background can still appreciate bones.
Awesome. And my background is I'm a Muay Thai coach, and I also I'm an amateur fighter too. So broken bones it's a big deal in the fighting world.
Of course.
So how did you find your passion for bones? How old were you, and how did you find it?
Well, I guess it's really been a lifelong process of growing up. I grew up in the Midwest, and I spent summers outside, and I wasn't a terribly good athlete. And so I spent a lot of time with nature. I was counselor at nature camp at Boy Scouts and a private camp or two when I was in high school, but I enjoyed birds and butterflies and collected snakes and, insects and so forth like that. And so I was close to nature and loved biology in high school. So then when I went to college, I majored in biology, and somewhere along the line, nobody in my family had been in medicine, but somewhere along the line, I discovered the field of medicine and felt like that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in medicine, but there would be certainly something that would be biologically oriented and certainly enough material to keep me interested for a whole career. So I finished college, went to medical school, and then in medical school learned about orthopedic surgery. Did my residency in orthopedic surgery, and that was really my first exposure to living bone, in terms of cutting it and drilling it and watching it heal and taking care of patients and so forth. And then I particularly was fascinated by the anatomy of the hand. And I guess I should have mentioned that back when I was growing up, I spent summers outside, but then the winters were cold, and so I spent them in the basement in our woodworking shop.
Yeah.
And my father was a civil engineer, and so he knew I liked to take things apart and put them together. So he'd bring home various, mechanical things and say, "Hey, have a go at it, see what it's like." And so I could get them all apart. I couldn't necessarily get them all together. So I guess the combination of the love of nature and the love of tool use and things mechanical is that it was natural for me to fall into orthopedic surgery. And then hand surgery, is a subspecialty of orthopedic surgery, and it really melds the artistry of the aesthetics of the hand with the mechanics of it. And so for a hand to be proper, it not only has to work well, but it also has to, look good. And
Yes.
that attracted to me. So then I spent my entire professional career doing hand surgery. And during that time, I've been on the faculty at UCLA. So I've written a number of professional books and over 100 journal articles that, would bore you to tears. But that tried to.
I could try to listen to them.
Tried to advance the field of hand surgery.
Yes.
And along the line, I realized that I had a knack for teaching in terms of simplifying concepts and figuring out what the student needed to know next and teach them that, rather than try to teach them everything. I mean, we've all had teachers like that they're very smart, but they don't know what we need to know next. They want to teach us everything they know in the next 20 minutes.
It's funny that, sorry to cut you off. It's funny to hear you say that, because it's the same thing with fighting. You have great fighters who can't teach because right. they expect you to be a great fighter, and most great fighters are beyond this world. So a normal person that's coming in that works a 9 to 5, you can't teach them the way you think. You have to kind of I don't want to say dumb it down, but you got to make it simple.
Well, one thing I've learned is to attach myself to somebody who's just a year ahead or two of me, a year or two ahead of me in whatever I want to learn. Because if you go to somebody who's 15 years ahead of you, they don't remember how to get from A to D. They say A, D, it's easy, just do it. Yeah. But somebody who got from A to D and they remember steps B and C, then they can walk you through it. Yes. So that's where I have to get back in the student's head and say, okay, it's intuitive to me to get from A to D, yeah. but right now he needs to get from A to B.
You taught me something right now, by the way.
Well, you know it intuitively. We all know it intuitively, but
you taught me that's a realization that I should always have somebody that's learning just like me, but a little bit ahead of me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're going to be the best teacher to somebody who's just a year or so behind you, so that you can guide them through that.
And so you said mechanically a few times, and the way you talk about bones in the first chapter, you talk about their structure and how they're carved and how everything links up together, and it creates this the strength that creates the, I guess, the mechanic side of the bones. It made me so excited about bones, because I didn't realize that every little detail, whoever created us, whatever created us, every little detail means something. And that's what you brought to light in my eyes in the first chapter.
Right. Well, there's no inefficiency in biology. If something's extra, it gets trimmed off, and that's one of the really fascinating things about the structure of bone, is that it's a composite material. It's this calcium crystal that has a special property of being able to generate an electric charge when you put pressure on it. But then this calcium crystal is deposited on a meshwork of collagen. And collagen is a protein, and it's a little bit springy. It's very strong. If you took a strand of collagen and compared it to an equally diameter of steel, is that the collagen is stronger. So when you have this meshwork of somewhat flexible and very strong collagen that won't stretch, and then you lace onto it this calcium crystal, which is, of course, compression resistant, so you can't step on it and mash it. Well, then you have this material that's pretty much strong in every way that you would like something to be strong. I mean, yes. A good analogy is using plaster on lath, or making a stucco wall where you put cement on a wire mesh. So that it's a composite. It's fairly rigid, but it's a little bit flexible, and it's the same with bone. And then, compared to all the rest of our, zoological tissues, is that bone is the only one that really preserves. and so that it takes good care of us during life. But then, as you'll see in the second half of the book, bone has an incredible, long history going way back before the dinosaurs, and that in many respects, that's the only way we know about ancient life is the fossils that formed in bone, because liver certainly doesn't fossilize, or pancreas, or skin. Yes. And so that to look back and see animals from 100 million or 200 million years ago, it's because this remarkable structure of bone allows it to be so.
Yes. And you talked about how our bones at 25 start to diminish. They start to, I don't want to say I'm 30 years old right now. So I hope my bones are not weak. Right. But I didn't know the peak point of bones was at 25.
Yeah.
So
yeah, sorry. Well, so I mean, you continue to grow. Usually, boys are skeletal mature and quit growing any taller when they're 18 or 19, and then very active during early 20s, and so the bone becomes maximally strong. And then don't worry, because your bone will only very slowly begin to weaken over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
Okay. And then by the time people get into their 40s and 50s, is that they're less active, their entire metabolism is slowing down, and so that the bone begins to lose calcium at a faster rate after that. And that's particularly the case in women, because the estrogen protects their bones, but then as they go through menopause and they lose their estrogen level, then their bone becomes weaker faster. And now having said all of that, is that it behooves all of us to maintain our bone mass, yes. Get it maximally strong by 25, and then eat a decent diet, and also exercise regularly. This is behind the recommendation to walk vigorously or jog regularly for 20 to 40 minutes, almost every day, because that impact pounding on our bones tells those little bone cells that we're experiencing some force on here, and that we need to make some more bone and preserve the bone that we have in terms of maintaining the strength.
So how do you feel about people punching each other in the face?
Well, that probably makes your face bones a little bit stronger. But the bones that are at risk from osteoporosis and yes. fragility fractures, as people get in their 60s and 70s and 80s, are wrist fractures from falling. They lose their balance and stumble over a parking barrier or a carpet in the house. And then the huge bugaboo is hip fractures, because when somebody falls and breaks their hip, the statistics show that only 50% of those people ever recover their pre-injury level of activity. Yes. And that at a year, only 50% of them are back to their pre-level of activity, meaning that they may be on a walker for the rest of their life. They may be in a rehab center for the rest of their life, in a convalescent home. And even that is that 20% of those people that break their hip die within the first year. Now, they don't die of the hip fracture itself, but they die from the disuse of being in bed, and they catch pneumonia or get a bladder infection, and their health goes down, and they die. And so that with those dire statistics, it's really important that all of us maintain our bone health, so that if we do stumble and fall and we're 70 or 80 years old, we just skin our knee and bruise our wrist, but don't have a death-threatening fracture.
And the hip bones, and I believe you said the wrist bones. I'm not for certain on the second one, but it really surprised me that they don't heal as fast. You're saying all this about the hip bones, how people die from just not ever recovering. And it's because the hip bone doesn't have enough veins and recovery going to it, right?
No, it just heals. And people 100 years ago, if they had a hip fracture, there wasn't any choice but just to lie down.
Yeah.
And over 6 weeks, 6 or 8 weeks, the fracture would finally get sticky enough that they could first sit in a chair and then begin to walk on a walker and slowly, go to a crutch and then a cane and so forth. But in the duration of that time, it is that their muscles were wasting away. They were losing their lung capacity. The tone of their bladder goes bad. Every system goes out of kilter because we're used to moving.
Yeah.
And when we lie down, is bad things happen. So yes, the bone would heal. Now, then when internal fixation of fractures came along, and then the surgeon was able to operate on a hip fracture, and that's really been around for 50 or 80 years in one form or another, is that by able to put a plate and screw across the fracture site meant that the patient could get out of bed the next day and at least sit in a chair and maybe do a bit of walking with a walker, so that the downtime being flat in bed was markedly reduced. And even that's gotten improved now, because it used to be that somebody was a little bit sick, maybe they had diabetes, or maybe their blood pressure was bad. And so they'd come in the hospital with a hip fracture and they'd say, okay, well, we got to work you up medically and get your diabetes under control and get your blood pressure under control. And that's going to take 3 or 4 days. And then the surgeon can fix your hip. But what people learned was that even those 3 or 4 days of lying in bed, markedly increased the statistics of disability and death. And so that the normal treatment now is trying to get those hip fractures fixed securely, operatively, within the first 24 hours after a fracture, so that the body never really has a chance to know, that it was infirm and it had to be supine for a short period of time. And so that's markedly improved. But that nobody wants a hip fracture. Nobody wants it operated on. Yeah. Nobody wants to run those risks. And so, eat well, exercise regularly. And yes, you can break your face or your knuckle with fighting, but that doesn't put you to bed.
Yeah, because I could still walk and move. Yes.
A hip fracture or a spinal compression fracture, will put you to bed, and those are the real dangerous ones. And so that's why we call wrist fractures the canary in the mine, because if somebody falls and has a wrist fracture, it is that suggests that their bone is weak. And it's not that the wrist fracture is going to cause a problem, but they should get worked up straight away for osteoporosis and make sure that their bone density level is good. And if it's not, then begin to work on it, because the wrist fracture may be the prelude to a life-threatening hip fracture.
Yeah. And you talk about surgery, and you were a surgeon before. Are you a retired surgeon now?
As of this past March, I took the lockdown as a reason to retire completely from practice.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. More time to write.
Yeah, more time to write. And when you're doing surgery and you're fixing fractures, you're fixing broken bones, or you're fixing bones, basically, how intense is that? How focused do you have to be?
Very.
Yeah.
Anything that becomes routine, but there's certain steps that you're trained to make, and the orthopedic surgery residency is 5 years. The hand surgery fellowship is another year on top of that, and it's a graded hierarchy, gradual increase in responsibility, and there's teaching and learning that goes on at every level. But that by the time you've been through 5 or 6 years of it, is that you're totally familiar with the steps that you take on each patient, and just becomes part of routine. I mean, I'm sure that you or I trying to fly an airplane would be terribly stressful. But for a pilot who's been through the training and goes through the checklist every time he gets in the cockpit, then it's just part of doing business. And so I don't think surgeons generally think that doing surgery is stressful. I mean, generally we like doing surgery. And that's the most fun part of our job. But that I guess we are comfortable with it because the training was long and thorough and ongoing, really.
And so in fighting, we spend months in the sparring room, just sparring lightly, not really fighting and not really hitting each other hard, but we're practicing to spar. How do you spar as a surgeon? How do you practice without really cutting someone open?
Well, I think once we develop the skill, then we just use it often enough that we maintain it. Now, in terms of developing the skill, is that beginning with the freshman year in medical school. That's the gross anatomy course. That's the kind of the watershed entry into medical school, and so that anybody who hasn't used tools at all at that point dissects the cadaver and doing their best to identify the critical structures and to retract the other structures aside to see into the depths of the anatomy. So there's some skill developed there, and I think it's also at that point or somewhere during medical school, it's a little bit self-selecting because the people who are good with their hands and have good three-dimensional spatial relationships, they're probably going to be attracted to a specialty like surgery. Whereas somebody who just doesn't get it or kind of fumbles and has a hard time getting their shoes tied, is that they're not going to get much positive feedback when they're in the operating room assisting, and so they might decide to choose pediatrics or pathology. Now, I'm not denigrating those specialties whatsoever because those specialties have characteristics. For instance, in pediatrics, is the ability to manage a sick child and sometimes see a child die. And that is not in my constitution. As I rotated through pediatrics and medical school, I just said, kids are fun. I love them. But to see one sick and, run the risk of them dying, that's just something that I can't cope with. And so every specialty attracts certain personality types and, certain manual skills and so forth. So I think that people with good manual skills and like to exercise them in a profession, they would be more likely attracted to surgery. And so, you're starting off with somebody who spent the winters in the workshop or spent their summers repairing cars or building guitars, stuff like that. And so they may come to medical school with good manual skills, and they know that they like it. And then it's just gradually developed. In the third year of medical school, have a 12-week rotation on surgery. So you're in the operating room assisting a surgeon and the resident at that point. So you're listening to all the discussion, you're watching them work. They may let you to tie some knots and cut some sutures and so forth. And so that just little by little, the ropes fed out to you so that by the time you finish your residency or by the time you finish your fellowship, you're well equipped to, fly independently.
Yeah. And the process that you just said right now, that process goes with everything. And at 30 years old, I'm realizing if you want to learn anything, that you have to do that. You have to put in the time. You have to put in the work.
Well, you've watched Karate Kid more than once.
Yeah.
Wipe it on, wipe it on, wipe it off, wipe it off.
Yeah. It's just what you got to do.
You're developing a muscle memory that's going to stick with you if you're tired or distracted. It's not going to go away. It's there, but it takes work to get it.
Yeah. And before I started this podcast, I thought every specialist was different. I thought every specialist was someone that I can't be, right? I can't be a surgeon now. I'm too old to become a surgeon.
Not necessarily.
But it's not really anybody's different. They just decided to bunker down and focus on one thing and just drive for that. And that's awesome. It's awesome to be talking to you, that you've retired and you've went through it. And thank you for doing your time, and thank you for specializing in surgery, because
I loved it.
without people like you, we'd probably be a bunch of mindless apes. So,
Well, every job, and every person, can make a contribution, and that, we need everybody working together. So I don't feel like that, I
yes,
was anything special. I fortunately had a profession that I loved, and it was fun getting up every morning. And there were some days I was tired because I hadn't slept much if I'd, been in the emergency room the night before and so forth. But that, looking back on it, if I had it to do again, I would do exactly the same thing.
awesome. And so you retired. After you retired, or did you write the book before you were retired, or?
Well, Jesse, I've probably been writing the book for 40 years.
Oh, okay. that makes sense.
in my head.
So was this
well,
all? Was that?
Well, because as a resident, I got to watch bone heal from week to week. Say somebody breaks their wrist or their shoulder, and we take an X-ray and treat them, and come back a week or two later and take another X-ray, and so you can see the bone heal. And then when the fracture fragments are sufficiently healed to one another, then long before they're ready to get back to sports, is that then begin to rehabilitate the soft tissues, and so the joints don't get stiff and that the muscles don't get terribly weak. And that was very satisfying to get those people back in the game, so to speak, whatever they were doing. And I think that's pretty much the essence of orthopedic surgery. We don't deal with life and death issues on a very regular basis at all, but that we deal with quality of life issues in terms of getting an athlete back in the game, or keeping a elderly person with a hip fracture out of the nursing home, those sort of things, or a carpenter back to his work.
His job. Yeah.
Right. So it's quality of life. And so, had a lot of experience in residency in terms of watching bone grow and heal, and learning all of the rather unusual but strange things that can go wrong with it. And, then had a career mostly in hand surgery. And I wrote several books. I wrote a textbook for medical students. It's called 100 Orthopedic Conditions Every Doctor Should Understand. But that I took what we talked about earlier in terms of trying to get into the student's head and figuring out what they needed to know next. I mean, and for instance, the standard textbooks at the time is that they were written by a specialist, but they were written about topics that the specialist was interested in. Usually those are the really strange and rare things, which a medical student, particularly if they were going to go into pediatrics or gynecology, they'd never see. They wouldn't see in 100 years. Yeah. And so I stepped back and I said, okay, well, what 100 diagnoses do I think that every medical student should know? I mean, for instance, low backache. Now, none of the textbooks, as common as low backache is, none of the textbooks covered low backache. And I said, well, even if you're a pediatrician, your neighbor's going to ask you about your back. Yeah. Your mother's going to ask you about your back. Yeah. And so I approached the book from that way. So just very common diagnoses. And then a few years later, I wrote a book called The Hand Owner's Manual, a hand surgeon's experience with dealing with everything about the hand. And so we not only talked about common hand conditions there, but also just how influential the hand is in our life in terms of sign language and symbolism and art and music, and what a hand needs to do to be able to play a musical instrument and so forth like that. But once again, sort of bringing the whole idea of hand from A to Z into a focus for a layperson to understand. And so along those lines, you can see there's a developing thread here that then when I set off to write a book about bones, okay, well, I'm going to make it understandable for lay people, and I'm going to share my enthusiasm of it about the things that I know that I've learned over my career. But then I had to stretch into the second half of the book, which was the bone's second life and what happens to bone after the original owner dies. And so what happens if a skeleton gets dry out on the desert versus getting buried versus getting silted in as the dinosaurs did on a riverbed or seacoast, and then the paleontologists excavating them and anthropologists studying them and all the ways that for instance, the Native Americans, the Inuits, all the different ways that they repurpose bone to ease their life in terms of making spear points and fish hooks and kitchen utensils and buttons and toggle harnesses for their sled dogs and on and on and on. And so that was that's been totally new for me in about the past 5 years of spending a lot of time on the internet, going to museum websites and searching their collections of bones. And then also prior to lockdown, we had an opportunity to travel widely and frequently. And so I made a point of going to museums wherever we went and discovered that you'd expect that there'd be a lot of bone in natural history museums and in science museums, but there's a lot of bone in fine art museums, at least in terms of painting. Knocked my socks off one day. I was in Phoenix and went to the Musical Instrument Museum. There's a wonderful museum. And I went just for the afternoon of enjoying musical instruments, but blew me away in there, how many of those folk craft musical instruments were made out of bone. Flutes, of course, but that also fittings on bagpipes. And there was a ukulele that had an armadillo shell as the body for the ukulele, and on and on and on and on. And so that was really exciting. The more I knew about bone and the more I delved into it, then the more I learned. And so, just around every corner, a new discovery. And so to get back to your question, 40 years in general, but about 4 years in terms of developing an outline and getting an agent and having agent help me get a publisher. And then it was almost 2 years from the time the publisher agreed to print it before it came out, because there's a lot to do in terms of just proofreading and getting the book formatted and all of this book had 150 images in it. And so, to get all them formatted and so forth, it took a long time.
And I just interviewed a journalist that is a reporter. Yes, obviously he's a reporter, but he wrote a book and he's on to his second book, and he was explaining on how hard that is. On you have to do the research and have it all outlined out, and then you have to present like a year's worth of work, or to you did 40 years worth of work. And then you present it to a publisher, and then you don't know if you're going to get published or not. You don't know if they're going to take it. And that's scary. That's a risk in its own.
Well, I mean, I have told people with bones that I'm glad that I'm not trying to make a living as a writer. And that keeps it fun, and that keeps me from having to knuckle down to any deadline. But that you're right. I mean, once I had the idea to do this, and I, drafted an outline, and then for a nonfiction book, to get a publisher, you need to go through an agent if you're going to publish it in the standard 20th century way. So the agent wants to see a proposal, and the proposal, outlines what you want to do in the book. It has to show why I am the right person to write the book. It has to discuss competing titles. What type of books are your readers going to be reading now, or what book might they buy rather than yours? And so I had to go to the bookstore and Amazon and look at a number of different science books for lay readers and see what the strengths were and make sure that nobody was writing a book that overlapped bones. And then they want to see chapter summaries. So there were like 20 chapters in the book. So they want to see a long paragraph summary of what's going to be in each chapter. And then they want to see an entire chapter to actually see whether this so-called author can write or not.
Yeah.
And So then, you got to go through the internet on a special website on the internet. I've found a whole clearinghouse of book agents. And so you can filter those by fiction and nonfiction and what type of nonfiction they're interested in. So I sent the proposal out to about 8 or 10 um, agents and was lucky to have one that was interested in it. And so then she helped me buff up the proposal, which took a few more months. And then she sent it out to about 8 or 10 publishers. And W.W. Norton, publisher in New York, liked the idea. And so they agreed to publish the book.
That's
so,
awesome.
It's a long road to hoe, but that just for any of your listeners who might be interested in writing a fiction, is the agent and the publisher want to see the entire book. Yeah. They don't want to take a gamble to know whether your fiction is going to end up good on the last page or not. But
I thought you were going to say not to write a book. I thought you were going to tell them not to write a book.
No, not at all. And then, but with the nonfiction book, they say it's a mistake to write the whole book before you submit it, because if the publisher says, "Well, we like your idea, but that we want you to go, here rather than there with it, and talk more about this and not about that," well, then if you've written the whole thing, then you got to maybe throw 3/4 of it in the trash and and start over. So have a good outline, know pretty darn well where you want to go with the whole thing, and then let the publisher guide you, because they're doing this all day every day, and they know what the competing books are, and they know what is selling presently, and so they can guide an author to have a home run.
Yes. And I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but I have a few more questions for you. And one,
of course, I'm no hurry.
One was about how tribes, they still to this day, I think there's some tribes that form they form the baby's head, like pointy or
yes.
flat head. I think you said Hans, the Han, the Maya, and the one other tribe that they flatten the heads of babies, so they have these odd shaped head when they get older. And is that I wrote on my Instagram the other day on how crazy that was. Basically, I had a little caption, but is that something bad? Is that something bad to do?
Apparently not, because cultures have been doing it for probably at least 8,000 years. Because anthropologists can dig up skulls of adults that have had their heads formed. One very common one was to elongate the skull, but they would take a tight band around the child's forehead and hook it around behind the back of their head and have them wear that for a couple of years. And of course, our skulls when we're born are very flexible and have a lot of joints in them, and so that the skull can deform enough to get through the birth canal. And then, of course, that all the babies at first have a soft spot in top of their head, so that for the first couple of years is that the skull is very malleable. And so there were a lot of cultures on all of the inhabited continents, and so this idea developed many times. But that a lot of cultures would elongate the skull, and nobody really knows for sure why. Whether this was a sign of upper class, or nobody knows for sure. Now, a lot of the American Indians would go the opposite and flatten the back of the head. So if the baby was in a papoose, is that they would strap the head against a flat board on the back of the cradle board and flatten the back of the head. So, to each their own. Yeah, but in fact, it does it so slowly, and the bone is so soft that it apparently has no adverse effect on the brain size or brain development.
So it doesn't smash, so when they flatten the back of the skull, it doesn't smash the brain?
Well, I think it would, if you try to do it all in one day, yes, but over a matter of several years, no.
Okay.
It all adjusts, and of course the bone's growing too. So it's adjusting to the brain.
And
so it doesn't seem to make a difference.
I have a buddy and a listener that his baby, his newborn is actually getting their.
Excuse me, just a second, Jesse.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
No worries. But his baby is getting its head formed shaped I guess circular, because the baby was born with I think a flat head basically, and they put a helmet on the baby's head to form it into the right size.
Right.
So is that just for our visual? Is that cosmetic, or is there going to be long-term effects if they don't form it to the right form?
I don't know. That's. I mean, I wonder whether the baby was perhaps missing a section of bone out of the skull to begin with, and so they're protecting it while new bone grows in there. Maybe. Frankly, I've never heard of that, Jesse.
Okay, so I need to get more information on that.
That's right.
But he was just saying that they're forming it to look circular, like normal, I guess. But so do you have any I guess anybody that's aspiring to be a bone doctor or a doctor or anything in the medical field, or anybody going after their passion, do you have anything to say to them? Do you have any encouragement to them from what you know?
Well, I think people who have any inkling in medicine at all need to do well in college, and it used to be that if you were aiming for medical school, you probably want to have undergraduate degree in biology or chemistry or pre-med, something like that. Medical schools are looking far more widely for humanists these days. And for instance, our son went to medical school, and I told him that in college he ought to choose a major something that lit his fire, and learn a body of knowledge that would be interesting for him through the rest of his life, and that he could figure out a way to get a job later. But so he majored in English, and I think he was maybe one of two English majors in his class, but he said there were philosophy majors and so forth, and that regardless of one's major in college, they need to take the necessary pre-med courses. And then I think it's really important for people in even high school and colleges to volunteer at a nursing home, volunteer at a hospital. That's going to be a lot easier, when the pandemic's over. But that, be around sick people, and to make sure that you feel comfortable in this situation, and that this is the way you want to spend your life. Because you say, well, the science is interesting, and man, I'd love to be able to fix knee ligaments in those pro athletes. But that you're going to be around a lot of people who are, unhappy and hurting and uncomfortable and frail, and may not have the most tact, and that you need to make sure that, in fact, you're comfortable with that, and that you can, truly help these people. So, have fun in college, do well. Learn something that you can take into your career, and broaden the field of medicine. There, over the centuries, there have been a number of famous doctors who were also famous authors. So don't limit yourself just to a science undergraduate degree, but make sure that you have enough experience so that when you look at the admissions officer at medical school, you can look them at the eye and say, yes, I know I want to be a doctor, and I've had these experiences A, B, C, and D of volunteering in the emergency room or in the clinic, and so forth. And I have thought it through very carefully, and I'm ready to go, light my fire. So.
and it's you're a very inspiring person, because you don't stop. and you went from the medical field to writing, and I believe you're going to work the rest of your life, but you're having fun doing it. That's what's so awesome. You could when you hear it on Audibles, or if you read it, you could feel how much fun you're having with writing about bones.
Well, good. I'm glad that comes through. And, I told you that's one of the reasons I chose medical school, because I knew that it was sufficiently complex field that there would always be something interesting and something new, to pursue. And I don't like to be bored. And so I think you're right. Now, I'm not going to write a novel. That's not in my bones, but that, I'm working now on a book on muscle that will cover muscle comprehensively, as I have done with bones. And I have 2 grandchildren. I'm looking forward to writing a children's version of bones for, say, 6th to 8th graders, to make the concepts a little bit more simple and use terminology that's suitable for them. So I've got some irons in the fire in terms of continuing to do things, but that
Awesome.
no, I do not ever see myself sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair all afternoon.
I think you said it right when you said I just don't like being bored, because I am the same exact way. They told me fighting is not going to happen for a while, amateur fighting, and the gyms are not going to be open for a while, or they're going to be less people, or it's just going to be harder. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something else. And I've always wanted to do communications. I've always wanted to do broadcasting and reporting and journalism.
Here you are.
And I'm actually going back to school, and I'm going to pursue this podcast thing and listen to people just like you. I'm still going to try to fight. And it's awesome hearing people like you, because it's inspiring. And I just got one more question for you.
Sure.
I have I broke my nose in a fight.
I can tell.
I was going to ask you too. Can you tell that I broke my Yeah, so I got elbowed in the face, and it blood was everywhere, and it just shattered, basically.
No, it looks good. It looks good.
And so when breaking your nose, it took so long. It took almost a year to get cleared to fight.
Right.
No doctor at Kaiser wanted to clear me. They kept on turning me away. I had to go to someone outside my insurance and go to a specific doctor that a lot of fighters go to. And he was just like, there's nothing wrong. He spent almost 6-7 months healing up, and it's fine. Is there a reason why the Kaiser doctors, or I won't put Kaiser out there, is there a reason why those doctors weren't clearing me for the nose?
Well, I think it's just you go to a specialist, and for you, it was a specialist who not only understood facial fractures, but also understood fighters. And the specialist that you went to, has taken care of a number of fighters, and seen them go back, and has a much better feeling about what's too early and what the right time is. And one of the strongest admonitions in all of medicine is first do no harm. And so the doctors that saw you first, they said, well, I don't know whether his nose is sufficiently healed that he can go back, but that I don't want to cause him any harm by sending him back too early. So let's wait a while.
Yes.
Okay. So they were being conservative, and in the interest of your nose, not necessarily in the interest of your fighting shape.
Yeah. And I knew I was gonna ask you right away. I was like, did you know? Can you see that I broke my nose? I've actually broken it 2 times in my life. I was playing basketball in middle school, and the ball hit me right in the nose, and it broke one time. And then now, as I got older, it broke again. It's just like, it was just finally getting back to normal.
Your face wouldn't have any character at all. We're all a little bit asymmetrical.
But thank you, Roy, for doing this for me. You don't know how much I appreciate this. It's more people like it. The people that I talk to, more like you. It's gonna make me better at doing this podcast. It's the energy that you bring to this book, the energy that you bring to life. It's amazing.
Good.
You don't stop. And I'm thankful for you. And where can people find your book?
Well, it's all the major booksellers, Bones, Inside and Out, and there's an audio version of it. I guess you know that.
Yes.
And also, I'd like to make sure everybody knows about my blog, because the blog's been going on longer than the book, and it's aboutbone.com. But I post an article every 2 or 3 weeks on some aspect of bone, and that not only covers human bones and fractures, but that had a popular one about a year ago about why they have to kill horses who break their legs. But we also talk about the uses of bone. It's actually up on bone powder is actually on the surface of a satellite that's circling Mercury at this time, because it reflects light better than any man-made substance could. So that the blog covers A to Z in bone, and that so if you want to learn a little bit about bone, look at the blog. And if you want to have a look at the book, then it's Bones, Inside and Out. And you can find that at all the major booksellers.
Awesome. Thank you again, Roy. And
my pleasure. I've had fun talking to you.
Thank you for doing this. And just know that you have a fan I'm going to be a fan of yours for a long time, forever. And
That's good.
I'm going to go to your blog, and I hope everybody else goes to your blog and gets Bones, and be prepared for all of Roy's books coming out. And thanks again, Roy. I appreciate you guys listening, and thank you for joining us at HoH.